Yeah, so my heart and goes out to all those individuals who have already lost their homes, and for those whose homes are in jeopardy. I've been in touch with so many friends and family out there. I think one of the most unsettling moments I had was yesterday when I was on the phone with one of my dear friends, and she had been in the house. And the last couple of days, we had been strategizing together because she has children. The goal plan, right? The evacuation plan, the strategy, what route that she was going to take. Has she packed yet? What supplies did she have? We were already making plans for the whole family to come to New York to stay with me as a backup plan. And she finally left her house for one moment just to go grab a bite to eat. And I was on the phone with her. I just happened to be on the phone with her. She was going to grab a bite to eat. And then she got an alert on her phone that her neighborhood needs to be evacuated. And so it was just this reality set in of like this chilling, eerie moment of anxiety runs through you when you get that alert and you have to run home and grab your go bag, put everything in the car. And I just started making phone calls to others and just hearing that sentiment of just fear and anxiety, and then loss, and then mourning for those who are lost. We are going to have so much to unpack, and there's going to be so much trickle down effect that is going to be as a result of this. But I thought for my purpose today is to really just clear up some of the misinformation that is out there, because politics has now been inserted into the discourse and the discussion. Mm-hmm. Some of the misinformation in terms of how it's being viewed is that because the LA fire chief is a woman who identifies as part of the LGBTQAI community, has been reduced to at fault for these wildfires that are at play. So now we're bringing DEI into the conversation. And to this fact of like, what is DEI? A fire chief is one of the most distinguished fire officials that LA has. When she took the exam, she ranked number 50th out of over 16,000 applicants. And so if you look at the 2 decades of experience that she has had, she's more than qualified. But the fact that we have to talk about this just shows where we are in our state of political discourse, and then how we have now turned every situation into a political discourse. President Trump has made inaccurate statements about Governor Newsom in the sense of placing blame on Governor Newsom for not adequately using and tapping into the Northern California resources and water sources in order to bring down that water into LA. That's not true. Mm-hmm. LA doesn't receive its water source from Northern California. It receives the water source from the aqueducts of LA. Wow. The next thing is there was concern about the water being able to have the strength and the velocity in order to push through the hydrants. There's a couple things that play with that. One, in those type of moments of fire, you want to kill the electricity in order to prevent more fires from turning up and burning, so it causes the pumps to work at a different rate. The second thing is to get to the water source up into the Palisades. The water tanks that they have is such a large quantity of water that it holds. But if you can imagine, it's up in the hills, so you're trying to get the water pressure up into the hills while you're trying to literally put out fires in hundreds of thousands of acres. You're going to have the water pressure recede. It's no different if you are running your dishwasher, if you are running your sink, if you are washing your car outside at the same time. When you have all those different water sources running at one time, your water pressure will decrease just naturally. Now imagine trying to fight multiple fires in neighborhoods and communities burning at one time with everyone tapping into the fire hydrant at one time. It's just physics when it comes down to the pressure being lost. The next thing is that because of the Santa Ana winds, which Californians are used to dealing with, and for those who may not be familiar, it's this time of year where winds come at a very high rate and pattern, with high winds. That was also coupled with the perfect storm that California was receiving, in particular in that area, of hurricane gust that was going. So not only did you have the Santa Ana winds effect, but then you had hurricane gust. So that combination made it impossible for the LA Fire Department to use their planes in order to do two things. One, to scoop the water from the ocean. There's a special plane that they use to scoop water from the ocean in order to retard the fire until it lands, but also too because of the wind gusts, you can't fly at that elevation in order to put that down. The other thing that's important to note is that climate change is a factor, and individuals don't believe in science anymore. Individuals don't believe in climate change, but the reality is climate change is real. Los Angeles and California as a whole experienced 2 decades of drought, and so when you experience 2 decades of drought, the land is dry. And what ends up happening is immediately after the drought, for 2 years, California, particularly in that area, experienced incredible wetlands. Experienced incredible 2 years of rain.
Yeah.
And so with incredible 2 years of rain, it created what's called like the wetlands. And what that means is California experienced incredible growth of greenery, of grass, of trees, of leaves. And then they experienced a drought. So what happens? You have all that vegetation, all that green, all that grass. That is a what you call a perfect storm in order to ignite a fire, but to keep the fire burning. It's no different than when you have your fireplace, how some people old school roll up paper in order to put in the fireplace to ignite it. That's essentially what all that wetland has turned into, was to ignite that fire and to put it into a blaze. The other thing to put into perspective of why this is going to be one of the most costliest fires in American history, probably when it's all said and done, is because typically when you see these wildfires, they're typically like in forest or in unpopulated areas, because of the fact the cost of living is high in California. Individuals have to go more outward from the center of Los Angeles, outside of Beverly Hills, outside of Bel Air, in order to have affordable housing, but affordable housing that they can afford at a certain income level. And at the same time, because of regulations and deregulations and policies and people skirting the issue of living in those areas that have been zoned off as potential fire hazards, people push the limits. So now you have this urban dense centers in the hills and in areas that are prone to fire, where there should not be that level of population density there of homes. So that's also too creating this perfect storm of having these homes in these places and spaces where there should not be that much housing development as a whole. So those are all some of the factors that's relationship to the infrastructure needs of Los Angeles. But this has nothing to do with Mayor Karen Bass. Individuals can take issue what they want in terms of how they perceive of the mayor. But this has been a challenge within Los Angeles for decades in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of taking away things, limiting the budget. So at some point, America's always going to have that real conversation. If you want infrastructure change, and not just in California, but New York City, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Detroit, major urban centers, that's going to take funding in order to reimagine and update those infrastructures. Where is that money going to come from? The money has to come from the government. But where does the government get money from? Taxes. Right? And so if we want to have that conversation, we can have it, but there has to be rooted in the harsh reality of, for infrastructure to be updated, it's going to take funding from the government. In order for the government to do it, it's going to take tax revenue to come. And then the citizens of America have got to make that a question of how do they want that money to be raised, in what form of taxes.
Okay, Mike Muse is here. Thank you, Mike, for that insight. Very accurate. 888-742-3345. We got Terry from L.A. on the line. Turn your radio down for me, T. This is our brother T from L.A.
I ain't got no radio. Ring the damn bell.
Okay, all right. Ring the bell, man.
Mr. Ring. I'm going to fuck this shit up. Let's go. What up, Ring? What's up, homie?
What's good, bro? You on 10 right now. I couldn't even hear you, bro. How you feeling, brother?
I'm standing in the ashes, standing tall, my God. Repping my city, homeboy. That's right. How we do this.
That's what's up.
T, where you at right now, man? T sent me pictures like at 4 in the morning, 11 at night, and you know, he works for the power company, and so he has a different perspective, Red. Like he's 10 toes down in the middle of all this. T, where you at right now? What can you tell us? What are you seeing?
I'm on my way to San Diego, where it's bright and shiny and nothing's going on. But at the end of the day, what I sent you last night was a satellite perspective, what KCAL News was doing to let people know if their home was still standing. So when you look at the numbers on that video, you'll see that those are addresses to those homes. So if I'm sitting there watching the news at the relief center or the center where where we're staying at for shelters, I could see where my home stood. And if you see out of those 5,300 residents, only 2 or 3 of those are still there. What I sent Tracy was a bulldozer moving the cars out the way so that emergency personnel could get through. Mm-hmm. And then I heard Mike say something I'm going to elaborate on. The fire chief was doing a damn good job. But at one time, about 2 months ago, they were having a problem with people stealing fire hydrants, turning them in for money. They had to divert the switches and divert the pressure. Yeah, they were stealing fire hydrants, turning the metal in for money. So you turn the damn pressure on a certain area, and now you got 50 fire hydrants going on because these assholes are stealing the fire hydrants. And then a beautiful town like Pacific Palisades should always do fire and frequency checks because of the value of the city and the value of the town. Mm-hmm. When you do not do your basic checks on your fire hydrant, like you come in LA, they used to come around and a fire truck come on, turn the fire hydrant on, bleed it out, let all the air pressure come out so that the water's fresh at the tap. They will see that, but people complain, "Oh, you wetting the city up, you wetting my car." See, these things are coming back to haunt us. What you complained about is hitting you. Yep. When you divert all this money to other people and other resources, you don't take care of what's your infrastructure. They was always fighting the fire people for 50-cent raise. Damn it, let them have it.
Let them have it.
When you have fire out, they need you. Police public.
Terry.
Now we got the National Guard on the ground.
Man, I appreciate your bird's eye view of things, man. And this is a conversation we're going to be having for days to come, T.
I'm just looking at what Terry was talking about, the fire hydrants. I'm looking at an article in the LA Times from June of last year. According to the Golden State Water Company, over 302 hydrants since the start of 2023 were stolen.
That's crazy. And I'm gonna tell you something else. And I don't like to perpetuate, drama, but I know this for a fact. A lot of what's happening too in these neighborhoods when they're being evacuated. There are stragglers that are knowing when the neighborhoods are being evacuated, and they're running in people's houses and looting people's houses, right? And that's a damn shame. So, Mike, you talked about having a carry pack,
a go bag,
a go bag. Mm-hmm. So, if this is if your area is on alert, make sure you take your valuables, not anything that's going to be a burden. Right. I mean, but your information, your paperwork,
passports,
your passports, your pink slips or whatever it is you might keep,
They make fireproof safes, by the way. My mom used to keep ones, a fireproof safe that was small enough that you could put like passports, driver's license, any sort of thing that you would need to, identify yourself, in the future.
Okay, and so keep that in mind. Terry, thank you for the information, man. And Redman,
love you, fam.
Redman, you want to give it to him, man?
Hey, Terry, you listening?
Yes.
You are now a citizen of Sway in the Morning, baby!
I have a really quick question for Mike. Mike, are there any truth to some of the information that's being reported from like KTLA and some of the outlets out there that arsons, there's some arson information and 2 arsonists have been arrested in terms of the fires possibly being started by them in the Woodland Hills area? Mm-hmm.
It's a question that people are investigating.
Okay.
Is how much of this is actually arson? Is it arson? But nothing for sure has been determined.
Solid yet.
There hasn't been a formal investigation has concluded to pinpoint.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Henry Winkler had tweeted that there was supposedly an arsonist yesterday, so that was going around a lot.
See, the reason why I asked Mike that question specifically, because I know he doesn't like to go on speculation at all. Mike is like very fact-based, and he likes to do it that way. But because it was being reported by KTLA, I felt like that was a credible source. It's the news out in Los Angeles, so that's the reason why I asked you, because it wasn't coming from such and such.
Oh, no, it's a fair question.
Okay.
No, it's absolutely a fair question in terms of because there is moments where the embers are being blown as a result of the Santa Ana winds and then the hurricane gust. But there is a question of could have been arson in certain areas.
And there was an arsonist in L.A. that had just gotten arrested, I think, back in December or November of last year. So, a lot of people were pointing at that and saying, like, maybe this might be related in some way. So,
but that doesn't underscore everything I mentioned.
That's right.
So I want to be very clear.
Right.
That's why I don't want to lean too much into this. So I don't want to unpack it. But how originally it started and the impact and the ferociousness of it is from everything that I've outlined.
Right.
Okay.
Right, okay.
Thank you, Mike Muse. I want to pivot while we have you because I know you got to do some reporting for GMA all day, right?
Yeah, we got to follow the TikTok Supreme Court hearing, which begins at 9:45.
What can you tell us about that, and why is this so important?
It's really important because Tracy G did a really great job on Monday, I believe, reporting out what was happening with TikTok and TikTok possibly being bought by one of the Shark Tank investors. The United States government and Congress passed a law and regulation that said that TikTok had to be sold by January 19th. And in that moment, if it was not sold to an American entity, investor, business by the 19th, that TikTok could no longer formally be able to operate in the United States. TikTok immediately filed an injunction in order to take their case before the Supreme Court. The question was would the Supreme Court take on this case? And I said from the early beginnings that the Supreme Court had to take this case because of the millions of Americans who use TikTok. And TikTok now isn't just for dancing. TikTok is for small businesses. Small businesses have been able to increase their businesses. Even here in New York City, you will see a random bagel spot. All of a sudden, that's been around for decades. And all of a sudden, you see lines out the door and around the corner because all of a sudden they got discovered on TikTok, right? And so you see other small businesses who don't have money and income to do large-scale marketing and promotions are able to use TikTok in order to promote that. This is also, too, a new news source of how so many Americans receive their news. Mm-hmm. People are not receiving their news anymore on mainstream media, on ABC, CBS, NBC, Sirius XM, terrestrial radio. They are going to TikTok. So TikTok is much more than it used to be for dances. And so it was a critical question. And what the federal government really rested on, to which Tracy G discussed, was national security. And it was saying the fact that China will be able to use TikTok to influence. ByteDance owns TikTok. The parent company is based in China. Mm-hmm. ByteDance has said that they are not a Chinese-owned company. So put that out there. What they're saying is that the Chinese government will be able to use misinformation in order to manipulate the political system and discourse that is there. TikTok challenged that. And I will also challenge that too as well, and to say, is it a national security? It could absolutely be a national security. But if it is such a national security, and this is what I'm going to be looking out for today, for the questioning for the Supreme Court justices, if this is solely about national security and it being in China, then how come the federal government has not brought Temu into the conversation? How come the federal government has not brought Shein into the conversation? Those are two consumer good companies that are based in China as well. Both of those companies have access, because of consumer good companies, to your credit cards, your home address, your telephone number, and then also, too, what do they have? They have your consumer behavior patterns. They now know Heather B. often purchases black hoodies. So if she purchases black hoodies, along with sauce ingredients for cooking, what can I discern from her personality? So if I can discern that from personality, then I can create strategic misinformation campaigns that can target people like Heather B. based upon the new consumer behavior patterns. And so if it truly is about that, then why have we not grouped that into it? Or is it a matter of Congress doesn't understand technology and they needed to do something to show the American public that they're doing something? TikTok is easy because they can connect it to China. But the challenge is American government has done nothing for privacy protection. Yeah. That is, Data Protection and Privacy Acts has yet to pass in Congress. Congress has also, too, have yet to pass any AI regulations in the way that both the European Union has already done data privacy protection acts. The EU has already done AI regulations in passing. American government hasn't. That's because the idea to put the grass around it. And so the other issue at and I'll be wrapping soon, is China has said the problem with TikTok in saying that they cannot, ByteDance can't sell it is because of a law that the Chinese government has. And it has nothing to do with TikTok, but it goes to a regulation in a law that was established in China in the 1990s where China would not allow the exports of any technology out of China to be sold to any country or any entity outside of China. And that was using physical technology. We're talking like microprocessor chips, computers maybe. And now in this instance, they updated it to software, which is AI and machine learning and those type of coding and software programs. So they've already said they're not going to allow that to be sold. The next thing, as we wrap, is that what makes TikTok so fascinating for so many Americans is the democratization of the algorithm. And what I mean by the democratization of the algorithm is that there's so many other products that I won't use by name that uses products and tools to get the users to be in their ecosystem for a long time. Well, if you do a long form video, you'll get more viewers because the algorithm may introduce you into the Explorer page. If you use stickers, right? If you use music now, if you do this, if you get this amount of likes, right? If you get this amount of hearts and you get this amount of comments and you tag this amount of people, then maybe your post can get into the algorithm. What TikTok does is it democratizes all that. It gets rid of those tools and it just naturally promotes your content to new users, and that's how people get such quick followings because there is no strategy or gimmicks you need to use. With that being said, TikTok says that if you remove the American users from the motherboard, from the TikTok corporation, it will single-handedly change the algorithm. And if you single-handedly change the algorithm, then the use for Americans won't be the same, which is why I question this individuals or entities who are wanting to buy it. I don't even think they recognize that if you're going to spend $200 billion, which is the worth of it, by the time that algorithm gets removed from the central hub of TikTok, the value is not going to be the same, and American users are not going to use it the same. And you can't create the democratization of the system if it's not tied to the mothership or the motherboard, if you will. And so these are all the challenges that are going to be at place today, beginning at 10 a.m. When we begin to hear it. And listen, they have to make a decision quickly because they have until the 20th.
They have till the 20th, right? You said the 20th? And the 20th?
Excuse me, the 19th is the deadline. Sorry about that. The 19th is the deadline. And so we have up to the 19th for the Supreme Court to make a decision. The reason I put the 20th on there because President-elect Trump is coming in, and he does have an affinity to TikTok. He's changed his course, and then we will see what will be done from there.
Okay, and finale, since we're on the Supreme Court, I know it's a big decision that was in the air about President Trump, who wanted to bid to halt the sentencing for his hush money case, and that was supposed to take place.
That's happening today at 9:30.
So he went to the Supreme Court to halt the decision, which most people thought they would be on his side,
including myself.
Yeah, but that wasn't the case.
So what happened was, if you guys remember, a couple of months ago, the Supreme Court made a landmark historic decision by giving President Trump, and in the future any president, complete presidential immunity, essentially making them almost a king, which is to what our founding fathers, when they formed the Constitution, really ensured would not happen. As a result, this is why you see so many different cases being dismissed, the Jack Smith case being dismantled, et cetera. But in particular, one of the underlining opinions of the Supreme Court of why they gave him such presidential immunity is because they were saying that as a president with this immunity, the reason why they can't, be in court and deal with hearings and trials is because they're too busy being the president, and it will interfere with the duties of the president. What Trump's team did was by having this hearing, it is disrupting and impeding his ability as president-elect to perform his duties to prepare for the role of president on January the 20th. So then they took this to the Supreme Court to use a presidential immunity for this. The Supreme Court ruled in 5-4 decision that this presidential immunity that they granted does not have any bearing on the presidential elect. What they said was that as president-elect, your duties and what you need to do is not going to be impeded and impacted by you having to show up for court. Oh, by the way, virtually, And also, too, by the way, the judge in this case, Judge Marchand, has already said that he is not going to issue any sentencing for jail time.
Yeah.
And so the surprise of it all was Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett sided with the liberal wing of the court system by saying that this case sentencing can go on because of that. But I have always said, and I've gone on record, is that Justice Roberts is always going to be the X factor. And I do believe that when Chief Justice Roberts' legacy is done, it would be viewed from a very complicated perspective, but from also to a complicated perspective of what is his thoughts on maintaining the integrity of the courts. Because there are oftentimes he will side with liberal justice, and then he'll side with conservative justice. He's responsible for Obamacare being able to continue in its form, but then he also two-sided with the ability to have presidential immunity, but then he also two-sided in this case that the sentencing can go forward. So he's always going to be the X factor to watch in these next 4 years.
Mike Muse, give him a round of applause, man.
You smart, Mike.
Yeah, man. You see that, Red?
You smart.
You got to get him on a skit.
Mike Muse know his shit. He know his shit.
He never looked at a note.
Anytime a dude use the word retard, he know his shit. He know his shit.
He know his shit,
Either
right?
way,
Thank
we
you
don't
for
use it.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you for that info, Mike.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Mike. I know you got to. Can people watch you today?
Yeah, hit me up. Oh, yeah. All day on ABC News Live, beginning at 9:45 a.m. Throughout the day coverage, just doing analysis of what the Supreme Court justices. I'll be looking for the questions and then how the government and how the TikTok lawyers will be answering the questions that will be had.
Mike Muse, thank you. Citizens, a lot of people calling with questions for Mike. Hit them up directly at
I am Mike Muse, MUSNSAME on Twitter and Instagram.